Okay, so today, what I would like to do is to continue, but actually touching on that we have trumpets that is upon us right now. What I'll first do is go to Leviticus 23, and what I want us to remember is that whatever we have in the scriptures, and that whatever Moshe has set out or set down, or taught the children of Israel, that was all something that he received as a pattern to give to them. These weren't literal things that are taking place, because if you notice that in the later parts of the scriptures, the only feast that it speaks about that will be taking place is tabernacles, but it's not really saying that only one feast will be done. What it's actually showing is that, because tabernacles when everybody comes back and they're functioning in booths, and so if the nations of the world doesn't do that, they will have no blessing, which is the rain. That's what it's talking about. So when it's all said and done, everybody goes back to the family, and this is what tabernacle is all about. Yahweh, based upon what he showed, he called the children of Israel to dwell in booths, and this is actually returning back home. In my Father's house there are many mansions. You could say booths if you really want to, and because that's what it is. So everybody's returning back to the home. Now, in Leviticus 23, okay, and if you go to verse 24. So in verse 24 here, it says, speak to the children of Israel, saying, in the 7th moon, on the 1st day of the moon, you shall have a Sabbath. This is a high-day Sabbath, a memorial of blowing of trumpets, and it's a holy convocation. That means it's a gathering. This is a gathering. It's a gathering of Yahweh's children. Okay, so when all the gatherings have taken place, everyone will be gathered back to their Father. Now, the gathering just doesn't take place just like, well, one feast day and everything is good. No, there's a mode. We have fallen. Our brothers before us had fallen. Okay, we came to blow the trumpet to wake them up. Believe it or not, that's what we came to do. I mean, the trumpet is your message. Okay, well, we didn't do everything that we were supposed to do, and we fell too. Okay, so others are blowing the trumpets, and basically those of us who are supposed to wake up, as Yahshua did, those who are part of that gathering, they're going to wake up. But when they wake up, they have a duty. The duty that they have to do is to go back to blowing the trumpet. It's said to be speaking that message. That's what it is. Okay, that's all it really comes down to be. So we have been disconnected in a certain manner, and when we become reconnected, as right here on the planet right now, as your minds are opening, okay, and you're receiving the words of what your Father is saying, and your Father is giving you faith, okay, and you become a recipient of that faith because you have become receptive by changing the mode of conduct or the code of conduct. You have believed certain things, you have changed the code of conduct, and based upon that, He's given you a gift. And well, part of having that gift is to give. Okay? So if we don't give, everything gets blocked up. So as it comes through you, you really become a pipe, a golden pipe, which that oil flows through, or the breath comes through that trumpet. Okay? You are someone who now gives that same message out, and that is considered trumpets. So there's a gathering, and here goes, it is for the blowing of trumpets, and it's a memorial. It's to bring people's minds back to what Yahweh has said. Yahshua said he will give the Spirit to everybody, and this will, not everybody, but for those who is going to believe him, not everybody. And he said, when that Spirit comes, it will remind you of things to come. That Spirit is going to be really a trumpet. Well, when it gives it to you, when you and I start to receive that, we have a job, and that job is to blow the trumpet. sounded in Zion, the hill, where Yahweh tells you to do it, just by our daily lifestyle. Well, so part of what we've been talking about for the last forever here, but for the last 2 weeks now, this week included with last week, is to show everyone, and it's not that it needs to be shown because it's right there in the scriptures, okay, that Yahweh is actually calling you out to be separated from the secular world. This is, it's giving, okay? So last week we went through some scriptures, okay, we went to 2 Corinthians chapter 6, which, and verse 14, and it tells us that, we cannot be unequally yoked with unbelievers. Well, where are the unbelievers going to be at? Well, the unbelievers are those who don't really believe in whatever Yahweh says, the one who gives you faith when you believe in what he says and then turn to that code of conduct. People who don't believe that, he's telling you, don't become unequally yoked with them. Now, you don't have to scorn anyone or dislike anyone. He's just telling you, know how far you could deal with these people, okay? Because they're going to ensnare you one way or another. So here goes now. He says, for what partnership does those who are doing that which is considered righteous have with those who are doing something different, the ones who have heard his word but decide not to do it, which is called wickedness? Or what fellowship does light, which Yahweh is light, and if you start receiving that, you are becoming receptive to light, and darkness has been removed out of you. But if someone else is not receiving that, guess what? Darkness remains in them, because darkness was in us too. Just like it said, hey, don't be any way to the Egyptians, because that was darkness, because you were once in Egypt. Well, we were all once dark. Now we're receiving some light, and as we're receiving light, we have to continue to be receptive to that. So Yahweh is saying, what fellowship does light, or that which is receiving light, have to do with that which it is not allowing that light to come in, which is darkness? Or what harmony does Messiah, those who are looking out to save their brothers, because that's actually what Messiah is, have to do with Belial, those who are looking to enslave their brothers? So one is a service to others, and the other is a service to self. So one uses their brothers and imprison them, and the other actually is here to assist their brothers so their brothers could be free, that they could return home, that they could wake up again. Or what does a believer have in common with an unbeliever? What agreement can exist between the temple of Yahweh, which is the body that is receiving the Spirit of Yahweh, and that which is for idols? For you are the temple of the living Father, as Yahweh has said, I will dwell in them and walk among them, and I will live, and I will be their Father, and they will be my people. So he goes on and he tells you now, he said, therefore, he says, come out from among them and be separate. This is powerful. He's telling you there is no agreement that you could have. You can't fellowship in the manner of death that I need you to fellowship in order to receive this light, and be doing it over there too. You can't have it both ways. You have to do it a certain way. So he says, touch nothing that is a mixture of the good and evil that you see in the world today, and if you do that, he says, I will receive you. So come out of them and be separate. Don't touch it. Don't touch it. Don't go mingling with it, thinking that I could have this and that. It's not. He's telling you, do what Abraham did. He told Abraham, get out of there. And Abraham left. Well, it wasn't all peaches and cream. And it's not going to be all peaches and cream for you. People are going to tell you things. They're going to tell you that you're messed up for doing whatever you're doing, because they're not used to that. Okay? Now, we went to another scripture in Revelations, chapter 18, verse 3. And that says also, when the troubles coming upon the world, it says, come out of her, my people, so you will not share in her sins or contract any of the plagues. No, plague doesn't have to be the coronavirus. Doesn't have to be that. Yes, it could be that too. Okay? And you know, if you're listening to your father, you know you're not going to get a shot for a virus. You know that, because you know they're in nature, and that's part of your father's creation already. And the father tells you to do certain things, so they will stay at bay. So they're not going to cross the line. He already told you that. He's your healer, not man. Okay? So he already told you what you and I what to do there, and he says, come out of there, so you don't partake, you don't catch these plagues. But these plagues are also things that are coming upon the planet. That's a plague for humanity, period. When it happens and it's taken mankind, his infrastructure, and all that he has set up to control his brother, which are the sons of Belial, all that they have set up to control and take advantage of their brothers, all that is coming to an end. That's part of a plague that's coming. So you don't want to be part of all that kind of influence when that commode is flushed, because you're going down with it. So we don't want to. So Yahweh told you to get away from that. So what do? You live by the word that he says. Come out of it. Now in Isaiah 52, verse 11, it also tells you something. Now it says here, it says, depart, go out from there, touch no polluted thing, come out from it, purify yourself, you who carry the vessels. This is the bodies, the vessels, the temple of the Supreme Creator. This is what he's telling you. This is what you need to do. This is not just talking about those folks in Babylon back then. No, that was something for them during that time, but it's no different for you. Remember, the salvation of Yahweh is the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. And you know, you're going to get it in a different way. It's the same thing. Okay? So you're the only one way for you to get it. So when he told the children of Israel, this is what you do to receive my promises, guess what? It's coming down to you and I also. So in Jeremiah 51, verse 6, we went there. It says, flee from the midst of Babylon and deliver every man his soul. Be not cut off in her iniquity. It's telling you again, flee from the midst of Babylon. Babylon is all the confusion that you see happening in the world today. Okay, so you know, not to belabor the point of the coronavirus vaccines, but you guys probably know that they're trying to get the coronavirus and the vaccines again to the people, even though these individuals now know that it has caused a lot of damage. And from that, you have like 3.2 million people who have gone, who were healthy before, but now they're on disability just after taking the corona shot between 2021 and 2022. So you know things are happening. Now they're having this thing come out again. And the Biden administration just went ahead and approved for these same drug companies to make these shots. The taxpayers are going to pay for it, and they're having people come who are believing in this to get the shots all over again. And what they're hoping to do is to make sure that they have a coronavirus shot every year, just like the flu shot. This is what they're coming down to. This is confusion. It's madness. Okay? And when you say, no, I don't want it, I want my father to be my healer, you're going to be looked upon as you're nuts. You're going to be the problem, because you're going to be the one who they're going to look upon you as if you had leprosy. Okay? Because everybody else is supposed to be following what's going to help to fix the whole problem. But you, by believing what your father says to do, you're going to be a problem. So you can see where this is at. It's confusing. Okay, so now we go to Ezra. Okay, Ezra chapter 6 and verse 21, we went there last week. And it says here, it says, all such as had separated themselves from their filthiness, from the filthiness of the people of the land, to seek the Father of Israel, they ate. You know what they ate of? They ate off the feast. Now, the feast that Moshe set up is not the real feast. Okay, it's just a physical thing that people, it's symbolic. The feast that Yahweh is telling you about is for you to be gathered unto Him and for Him to feed you, Him to nourish you. Remember, the woman was taken into the wilderness where she is nourished. She went to a feast because she's being nourished by the Father. Okay, so not, the Father is keeping her. That's actually what's taking place. But she heard the trumpet. She separated herself because this is what you're being told. You and I have to become separate from secularism. Now, some people may tell you, okay, listen, you have to show yourself to be a descendant of Israel some kind of way. No, you don't. No, you don't. Look at your scriptures, because this is where it's going to happen when you start dealing with these people out in the world and you're telling them the authority you have to know where you're coming from. You have to tell them, because they're assuming that you're part of them, and you have to stand and show them that I am not part of you. You have to, okay? I'm doing a lot of fighting right now, so I'm telling you, but you have to. You can't go down with the ship that they tie you, okay, to the rudder with. They tie you to the rudder, and the ship is going down, and there's no way for you to go because, hey, you can't escape because they assume that you're part of the ship, and here goes. You have to let them know, I'm not part of the ship. I'm getting off before you even start sailing. I'm getting off right now. Okay, so now, the scriptures tell us. Let's go over to Galatians chapter 3. Okay, Galatians chapter 3. Galatians chapter 3, and we're going to look at verse. We're going to look at verse 8. So he says here now. So you ain't got to worry about. You don't have to worry about being part of Israel to have this promise, because that's not where it's coming from. Notice this now. It says here in verse 8, the scriptures prophesied that Yahweh would justify the heathen, or you want to say the Gentiles, or those who were previously heathens, okay, through the faith. Well, this book says the faith, but it's not talking about the faith. It's talking about faith. Not simply believing, okay? The demons believe and tremble. So it's not talking about that faith, okay? He's talking about that which Yahweh grants. The faith that Yahweh, the power that Yahweh grants you. After you and I believe the message, and after we act upon that message. And based upon doing it, which is the code of conduct, as you do that, naturally, the powers that Yahweh has already set for you and I to receive that which comes from Him only, you receive it. Now, to make the point, hold your place there in Galatians and go over to James or Jacob. Okay, Jacob chapter 2. Okay, and let's look at verse 17. It says, in the same way, faith, this is the faith also, but it's on faith, it does not have, if it does not have works, is dead. There is something that has to be done. There's a code of conduct you have to do. Being alone. Yes, a man may say, you have faith and I have works. show me your faith. So you see, he's not talking about me faith. Show me your faith without your works, and I will show you my faith by my code of conduct. That's how it is. You believe that there is one Father? Yeah, you do well. The demons also believe. The demons also believe. So it's not. So this belief is not. This is not what faith is about. Just simply believing is not what that faith is about. So let's go back over to Galatians chapter 3 here, in verse 8. It says here. The message preached before to Abraham, so that in all. No, let's go back up here. I'm sorry. And the scriptures prophesied that Yahweh would justify the heathen through faith. The message preached before to Abraham, so that in you all the nations are going to be blessed. In Abraham, you don't need to figure out if you have the Israeli blood. You don't have to. In you all nations are going to be blessed. So the heathen or the Gentiles, if they believe in the works of Abraham, they're also, and they do it, they're going to be gathered into. This is what your scripture is saying. This is what it's saying. Now, we're going to go over to Romans chapter 4. Let's go to Romans chapter 4. Okay? So now, before we go to Romans, guys, go to Romans chapter 4 and then also go to 1 Thessalonians. I'm sorry, 2 Thessalonians. We go to that also. So we're going to go to Romans chapter 4 and hold your place there in Romans chapter 4. And then we're going to go to 2 Thessalonians chapter 1. Okay? Okay, so here goes now. In chapter 1 of 2 Thessalonians, let's look at verse 11. To this end we pray for you continually, that our Father would count you worthy of this calling, and perfect all the pleasing works of righteousness and the works of faith with His power. This faith is coming through His power, and the Gentiles will be justified by His power, the faith, or faith, His power. So the Gentiles don't need to go proving that they're part of Israel, because they have a father, and the father's bloodline is going to go into all nations. And from that, Yahweh is going to call everybody. Now, let's go over to Romans chapter 4, and let's look at verse 16. Therefore, the promise comes by, this here says by the faith against, but it's by faith. By faith. So that it may be given as an act of unmerited pardon. Or some of your books may say that it may rest upon grace. Okay? And may be guaranteed to all Abraham's offspring. Guaranteed. Abraham, he's going to go into all nations. His offspring, his bloodline, all his posterity is guaranteed to you. Guaranteed. Not only to those who are off the law, so it's not just Israelis. It's not just talking about those, okay, or being circumcised, but also to others, those who were scattered amongst the nations and are considered heathens or Gentiles, but to them too, and also to others who share what? They share in the faith of Abraham. Not only those who are off the law of Moshe, but those who are not off the law of Moshe, but they do the works of Abraham. That's what Joshua told the Israelis who are off the law. He said, if you were Abraham's seed, you would do as Abraham did. In other words, you would have the faith of Abraham. You would believe what Yahweh said, which you would believe in me, and you'd be doing the things that Abraham did, which is the code of conduct that Yahweh is telling you about, that you need to do in order to receive His Spirit. Okay. Okay, so he says here, who who in this way is the father of us all. Abraham is the father of us all. The promise came to Abraham. Abraham took it not by anything else but by faith. As it is written, I have made you a father of many nations. He is our father in the sight of Yahweh, in whom he believed, and you too, if you're going to be his offspring. The Father who gives life to the dead and calls things that are not as though they already were. Abraham, against all hope, and this is you too, because he may put you in a situation that you think there's no way this is going to happen. And you and I may do it as the children of Israel did. We say, okay, these folks back in that land, we can't cross over. They're too big. We're like grasshoppers to them. Okay? Against all hope, you and I may jump into what we think is real hope. But Yahweh is saying, listen, believe in what I'm saying. And he put something before Abraham, and you know what he did? He said, Abraham, move out from among your people. Be separate from the status quo. Move out from them. Okay? I'm going to show you something that's going to renew your mind. This is what you and I need to do. So for me to do it, though, you have to separate from these people. You can't just allow yourself to be caught up in that area. Now, you don't hate no one, but let me show you what's going on when you don't have that other influence around you every day to hold you back. Same thing with the children of Israel. Come out from Egypt. Come out from Egypt, and so I can show you what's really going on. So you're not around this other influence here when I'm showing you what's going on. Same thing with the woman. She went into the wilderness. She's nourished, okay, away from the face of the beast. There's a separation. There has to be. I'm just trying to tell you that. Okay, we may not like it, but that's reality. Okay. So in verse 18 now, Abraham, against all hope, believed with hope that he would become the father of many nations, and he, as he had been promised, so will your descendants be. So you are part of those descendants. You being part of that descendant, you receive the very same promise as Abraham. You don't need to have Israeli blood. Israeli blood is part of the dilution. Yahweh says through Abraham's seed, all the nations of the earth, they're going to be blessed. Now let's go over to Genesis. Let's go over to Genesis, because this is what Yahweh is showing you and I. Genesis chapter 22. Let's go look at Abraham over there. Chapter 22. Let's look at verse 18. Okay? Because this is the same thing to Abraham. It comes down to you and I also. No different. Okay? Verse 18 says, through your seed, all the nations of the earth shall be blessed. Why? Why? Because you obeyed my voice. Well, what if the children don't do that? What if the descendants don't do that? Well, it already says, if they don't do what Abraham does, or they don't go up to do the Feast of Tabernacles, they won't be blessed. So sooner or later, they're going to have to get on the same kick. Because how all the nations, that's how the earth is redeemed. The earth is redeemed through this manner. Now, everything belongs to the one that gave Abraham that promise. Let's go over to Ezekiel chapter 18. Okay? Ezekiel chapter 18. Let's go there for a moment. Okay? So what you have here now, you have a vessel that was created, and you stepped into that vessel, because that vessel, all you have is an avatar. That's not who you really are. It's a body corporate. It's made of flesh and blood. That's not who you are. You are flesh and blood. You stepped into flesh and blood. Okay? That's the clothing or the fig leaves that were sown that you and I went into. Okay, so the body corporate that's there, that you're functioning right now, that you know, when you wake up, Yahweh is telling that you have to use that body corporate, your vessel, allowing His Spirit to come into it, receiving His Spirit in it, that you become His, and you do what He says to do. Because that body has been entrusted to you to carry out the mission that He put you here to do. As you're waking up, that's the only thing you know. Okay? The conclusion of the whole matter is that you and I have to reverence the Father when we wake up. That's the whole conclusion. Stop working for self, because it's all over. You're not your own. Okay? You, as Yahshua said, you were bought with, or not Yahshua, but as the scripture has said, you were bought with a price. Okay. Hence, the body corporate do not belong to you and I. Believe it or not. This rotting flesh that we think looks so good, or we're worried about how bad it looks, it don't even belong to us. It was put here, and we had to partake of it for our learning in this school, this classroom that we're in. So Yekizkel chapter 18 now. Understand that you're a soul, and you're hanging out in a body. And the body that you are in, you chose it as a son of the Most High, and you're receiving the same power as the Most High. He gave that to you. He gave that to you. In 18 verse 4, notice here it says, "Behold, all souls are mine. They're under my jurisdiction. They came out from me because we were all together and projected themselves down here under my power and jurisdiction, all souls. Not only the souls of the human, all souls. Okay, all souls. Just as the soul of the Father, so also the soul of the Son is mine. The soul that sins, it dies. Notice, the souls are mine. The soul that moves away from believing, and the soul that moves away from the code of conduct, it will be in darkness. That's what death is. That's what death is, the spiritual death. Okay? So now you come into the physical world, and that we partake in that area right there, and then we become subject to what happens in the physical world as we start identifying who we really are with the physical vessels. In the physical world, guys, everything is subject to breakdown. That's what happens in the physical world. Everything is subject to breakdown. Now, if we're stuck in the physical world and we believe that that's who we really are, well, guess what's going to happen until you put down that body and all of a sudden you figure out that there's more to this whole thing than what I just got an experience in that world down there. If that's who we believe we are, then everything comes down to us being subject to that which we believe. That's all that's happening. Until you leave that vessel and all of a sudden you wake up. Because life doesn't end when the vessel goes down. Okay? There's no cessation of energy. And that's who you really are. Light is energy. Now let's go with Corinthians here. Okay? Your Father doesn't create dead things. He's the Father of living, not the dead. You and I has moved ourselves into a mental space that we have become subject to that which you call death, because we forgot. That's why the first thing that Yahshua has to give you is a spirit that brings you back to remembering. It starts to get you back. And that spirit is light. Let's go to the 1 Corinthians, guys. Chapter 6. Let's look at verse 19 here. Okay. Verse 19 says, or do you not know that your body is the sanctuary or the temple of the Holy Spirit in you? But you have to receive it. You have to receive it by faith. Faith. Believing the message, the word comes by hearing and hearing and hearing and hearing. It's going to strengthen you, fan the flame of that spirit, okay? Then you and I converting to that code of conduct. Then the Father gives you, grants you, you become a recipient of that power. Okay? That's what's happening. He's going to give you a measure of faith based upon what you and I could handle. He's not going to give you faith for you to move a mountain, because you may not be there yet. You may take that mountain and crash into your biggest enemy's head. So he's not going to do that, because that's going to mess you up. So he's going to do that to me, for me to go using the power to get messed up with. Now, I may get upset, and I may mess somebody up. So he's going to give it to me based upon the measure that I can handle. Okay, so the body is a sanctuary or the temple of the Holy Spirit in you. It has to have a place to dwell. And when you receive it, then you have a job to do. When I receive it, I have a job to do. That job is to blow the trumpet, which you have from Yahweh. You have this from Yahweh. And you are not your own. The body corporate is simply an instrument. With your consciousness, you have to make things ready. That's what we got to do. Whatever consciousness that I have to make it ready, everything ready to receive the light, real light. And as this comes in and I'm receptive to this, the power of my Father is coming in by measure of faith. And so I am receiving the Gentiles, the heathens, in how I used to behave, whatever, okay? I'm receiving that power by faith, not just believing, by receiving the power of my Father in heaven. This is what receiving this faith is, because Yahweh gives this faith. And so you're an instrument. And when you follow the Father in this manner, you are dedicated to the Father, and the Father wants you separated. Separated in mind, but separated in the sense also that we just got to read it. You can't be agreeing, you can't be following these folks, because we become ensnared with that. Now let's go over to Deuteronomy chapter 28. Okay? Let's go over to Deuteronomy chapter 28, and let's look at how Yahweh is going to make this happen, how he establishes this. 28 and verse 9. It says, Yahweh will establish you as a holy people unto himself. Not any governments upon the planet. Unto himself. As he promised you an oath. That's what he did with Abraham. And you receive this by the promise. Not by keeping the law of Moshe. Now, when I say that, I don't mean throw the law of Moshe out, because the law of Moshe is still the school teacher. Okay, as he promised you an oath, notice there's a condition there. The same condition that was there with Abraham. Abraham was going to have this blessing right here because he obeyed my voice. Well, it's no different with you. It's no different with the children of Israel, which is Abraham's seed too. And it's not only to those with the law, but it's also to those who are of the Gentiles. If you will keep the commandments of Yahweh your Father and walk in his ways. Some books say walk in all his ways. If you will do it. If. So here goes. To do it, you have to first believe it. And his ways now becomes the code of conduct that you and I are going to convert to. Let's go over to Leviticus chapter 11. Okay? If we do this, if, Leviticus chapter 11, that's the big thing, if. Okay? There's a condition there. 11 and verse 44 says here, I am Yahweh, your heavenly Father. You shall therefore consecrate and sanctify. Consecrate, my friend, is dedicating yourself to something, and sanctifying yourself is cleansing it. So you have to become dedicated to it. And sanctify is actually doing what he says to do. So you and I receive something. So consecrate and sanctify yourself, and you shall be holy. Do you know the word holy means separate? And you shall be holy, for I am holy. Neither shall you defile yourself with any creature. Now, do you know creature simply means people? It means people too. Now, in the law books that you will read, you'll see that a corporation is a creature of the state. A creature. It's not a rodent. A creature is not just a rodent or something running around. No, you are a creature. You're a creation. That's the word creature. The word creature is in creation. It's simply a creation. A corporation is a creation of the state, but it's a fictitious person. It's not a natural person. It's a fiction. Okay? Now, when you take on the role of the corporation, you and I also become a creature of the state. But if we stay in the natural way, okay, the natural law of what the Father has told us to do, and maintain our natural right, then you're not part of the creation of the state. You remain a creation of the Father. That's all our creature is going to be. Okay, so here goes now. So you don't touch any creature that moves about on the ground. All it's telling you to do is what we saw already that Shaul says. That's all it says. Be separate. Do not touch that which is against your Father, and I will receive you. And that's what he's saying here. That's all that's being said in the law. Do not touch the creature out there, because it's called dead, and I'm going to receive you. A dead body corporate, a dead body. And I am going to receive you. Okay? So now, if you take this at face value and says, neither shall you defile yourself with any creature that moves about on the ground, you know the only way for you to defile yourself is with a body that's dead. That's the only way. So these creatures that's there that he's talking about are dead vessels, are souls that's within this vessel but has lost themselves in there. It's considered dead. They lost their memory. Now let's go to Leviticus chapter 20 now. Chapter 20. That's what your father's telling you. Look at verse 24. 24. 20 and verse 24. But I have said to you, you shall inherit their land, and I will give to you to possess a land filled with milk and honey. I am Yahweh your Father, who separated and set you apart from the nations. From the nations. He did the same thing to Abraham, separated him from those people. Did the same thing to Moshe, separated him from. Even Yahshua, when he came on the scene, he had to separate his apostles onto his teachings for them to get the message. The woman, she had to be separated from the beast. So you now, if you're going to do the works of Abraham, one of the first things that Abraham had to do was to separate himself from the land that he was born in. Separate. Okay, so let's go on to verse 26. So he was now, he will separate you from the nations, right? To be his own. Okay. In verse 26, it says here, you are to be my holy ones. You're not going to be my holy ones if you're not doing what I tell you to do. For I, Yahweh, am holy, and have separated and set you apart from the nations, that you should be mine. Wow, that's how he wants you to be his. He wants you and I to separate ourselves from the nations. From the nations. You got to remember that. Okay? So this belief system demands separations from secularism, from the secular world. Now, not only that, guys, it also demands that you and I make no contracts with it. We don't make any contracts with it. So we got to work to become separate, and then we got to stop making contracts with it. Now let's go to Exodus chapter 23. Now remember what I'm saying now. Your father Abraham got the promise, and he had to move away, and it was counted to him as righteousness because he followed the instructions of Yahweh. Man doesn't live by bread alone, but by every word that comes out of the mouth of Yahweh, right? Okay. Chapter 23 of Exodus here. Let's look at verse 32. You shall make no covenant, no treaty, some books may say, no contracts with them, nor with their gods, or whatever they feel is powering their world. Okay, make no contracts with that. Now, let's go to chapter 34 of Exodus. Chapter 34 of Exodus. So, no contracts. 34 and verse 12. Now, you don't have to hate nobody. You don't have to look down on them. It's not saying that, because they're your brothers and sisters. They're just being held in a place right now where you're not being held in, simply because you're receiving the opportunity in a calling, and they're not yet. But they're coming too, because they're also holy. They just don't know it. They just don't know it. You're receiving the message so you could take steps, okay, to make your election sure in holiness. They haven't gotten that yet, but they will. That's what Yahweh says. They will. So you don't have to look at them in scorn. They're simply children. They're simply children in this whole thing. And children don't know what they're doing. They'll do whatever they're going to do that they feel like doing, and they hurt themselves while they're doing it. And the adults now, or real adults, not people who are older but just don't know any better, still don't know anything, those who are actually have understanding, they know how to manage their minds and activities, and they're going to be doing something different. Well, that's how you and I are supposed to be right now. So verse 34, chapter 34, in verse 12, it says here, be careful. Be careful. This verse starts by telling you and I to be careful, that you make no treaties, no covenants, no compacts with the inhabitants of the land where you are going, or they will be a snare in your midst. They're going to be a snare. In other words, guys, a snare is a trap. They're going to be used by spiritual forces to entrap you and I. How could that be? Because those spiritual forces control them. But if you have dedicated yourself and sanctified yourself to be separate from those spiritual forces, and the power of Yahweh is moving within you, they're not in your midst. So if you now allow them to come in your midst, now here comes the infiltration that you can't see, but it's going to work against you. It's going to work against me if we allow that to come in. He's plainly telling us. He's telling us how to do it. Well, if you remember, the children of Israel didn't do that. And they allowed certain infiltrations to come in amongst them. And sure enough, it became a trap. A trap. Now let's go over to Judges. Let's go to Judges chapter 2. Okay? Judges chapter 2. Now, I still didn't get to the sightings. Because believe it or not, guys, your founding fathers, they gave this to you. They were your brothers who were sent before you to pave the way. They might have been Masons, but it doesn't mean that they're evil. They're just like everybody else. In everything you have Christianity, you know, there's evil spoken of Christianity too. Because Christianity will go around forcing everyone to convert to it, and people will convert to it because they got scared. This is Christianity. Okay? You go and look through your Bible right now and see what the Hebrews did. They went and committed all kind of atrocities going through. Look, that's what they were doing. But y'all didn't stop that. Okay? You go look at the Muslims. The same thing. You look at the Mormons. They did the same thing. All kind of atrocities. Go and look at the Hindu and the Buddhists. They all did the same thing. All kinds of atrocities. Go look at their histories, guys. It might have been brought up by a peaceful man, but they went to war. After that, they went to war. Okay, so here goes now. Judges chapter 2, look at verse 2. And you must make no covenants, no treaties, with the inhabitants of this land, and you must tear down their altars. Okay? This altar they're talking about is whatever they minister to their gods or their powers with, you're not going to do the same thing. So you're going to remove that from yourself. This is all that their altars are. But you have disobeyed my voice. How could you have done this? This is what I was told, but I didn't do it. Now, all of a sudden, an infiltration comes in because I was supposed to do one thing, but now I didn't do it, and I now live subject to them. Whatever I want, I go to them. But Yahweh told me not to do that. Well, how did I find myself there? Because my fathers created a system, and that system that they created was supposed to be all great, just like back in the times of Yahshua. Yahshua ben Nun, that is. And slowly but surely, someone allowed something to come in that infiltrated the system and started to deceive the people, and the children came down way down the line, being subject and enslaved to the sons of Belial again. That's all that's happening. Now Yahweh has awakened you, and He's telling you, listen, this is what happened. Now get out of it. Come out of it, my people, so you do not partake in the plagues that's coming. We're going to talk about those plagues that's coming here in a few weeks. But we got to think about what's being said here. Okay? So you could not possibly have a duty to these governments, to pay taxes or to have a license or anything that they cause you to create a contract with them in order for them to pull from you and put their fangs in you and suck the life energy out of you until you pass from this world. You couldn't possibly have a duty. So how do we do it? Now, let's go to Matthew. Let's go to Matthew here. Now, Yahshua came up in a time period that Yahshua came up in, they were in slavery. The Bible don't tell you that, and history don't tell you that, but the Romans, you couldn't do anything other than what the Romans said, or they're going to whack you. So this was forced. Things were forced upon you. So Yahshua came up in that world, and He was awake. And He was going to function and in a manner in which He could do the job with the body corporate that He was in while He was here as the personality Yahshua. So this is a conversation that came up, okay? And this is the answer that He had. Look at verse 7, chapter 17, and look at verse 24. It says, and when they came into Capernaum, those who collected a half a shekel tax came to Kepha and asked, does not your teacher pay the temple tax? They don't pay the temple tax? He said, yes. And when Kepha came into the house, Yahshua spoke before Kepha did, saying, what do you think, Simon? Of whom do the kings of the earth extract customs or tribute? From their own children, or from the stranger, or from the slaves? This is what's going on right now. Who are they going to collect taxes from? The elites themselves? Their children? No, they ain't going to pay a thing. They do it to those who they have enslaved. Okay? That's it. Now, the temple tax, that's here for the children of Israel. But the Romans also had a tax system. Now, let's go, and so whatever Yahshua is saying is going to both of them. Now, here goes Yahshua now in Kepha. So Kepha answered him, from the strangers, of course, from those who were enslaved, because the elites ain't gonna pay nothing. Yahshua answered him, then the children are free. They're free from any duty that you're going to put upon them. They're free. But Yahshua couldn't exercise that at that time because those who were there, they were going to have issues. So here goes verse 27 now. So Yahshua said, now, however, so that we may not offend them, because that's the system that we're under, he is saying. The founding fathers of the United States haven't come yet and emancipated you from that yet. So the system that you're under, he's saying, so that you don't offend those guys, so they'll get you and stick you on a tree for whatever reason. He says, go to the sea, cast a hook, and take the fish, and take the fish that comes out up first. When you have opened its mouth, you will find a piece of money equal to that, what they want. Take that and give it to them for me and for you. So now they got it, and they won't be offended. But what I want you to know, my friends, is that the founding fathers of the United States had something happen with the British. They were all off the land under the king, all of them, and they came here, okay, to find a new world, and they actually got a charter to function under the subjection of the royal of the king of England. They got a charter to function as a separate organization under the subjection of the king. And they grew, and they grew, and they became prosperous. And they were trading with other nations, and they were trading with the king, England too. And you know what happened? They felt that they were being taken advantage of, and they rebelled. Well, they tell you it was key, but things were happening before that too, and after that. Okay? So they rebelled. So Britain said, nah, these guys ain't doing that. Snatch their charter. In other words, the charter is a permission for them to do stuff over here under the subjection of the king. So take away their charter. Well, guess what the founding fathers did? So, okay, you take the charter. What we're going to do is declare our freedom. So they declared, they put a Declaration of Independence together, and what they did, they put the title of the charter, made it subject to their Declaration of Independence, that we ain't got to serve you, king. That's what they did. That's what they did. And over the whole war and everything, guess what? By the war, Yahweh led them to win. Because you're dealing with England, who was the power of the known world then. They had commonwealths all over the place that other people that they had done the very same thing. The United States, all that was the states that was here, okay? All that was simply a commonwealth of England too. That's what it was. But they rebelled. And Yahweh led them to win. Yeah, Masons, I understand, but they were being led. Okay? Masons can be led too, yeah. There ain't nothing wrong with them if they're doing the right thing. Okay, or any other one of them secret societies, ain't nothing wrong with them if they're doing the right thing. Okay. And ain't nothing right about the Christian if he ain't doing the right thing. It's all man's heart. That's what it comes down to. In your heart, what are you going to do? Because in your heart, we could mess up. And in our hearts, we could do what our Father says to do. So this now, we have a Declaration of Independence, and the forefathers said, this is how it's going to be. We'll create a government, and the government that we create, okay, we're allowed to be here, it's only going to have power over those who consent to it. So guess what? If you don't consent to it, you're not supposed to have any duties. And then when they have writings, all kind of writings that are here today, that's telling you and I, if we don't want that government, we don't have to have it. Well, how in the world did the government hold us like that? Because they tricked you and I into making contracts with them. That's all they have. They tricked you and I into making compacts. And then Yahweh said, listen, I'm waking you guys up now. So when I wake you up, separate yourself from that. And then make no contracts with them. Separate yourself so you don't get caught in the plague that I'm bringing upon this place right here. So separate yourself from it. Well, you heard the message today. We could do or we could not do.